The arena was built far from any normal world, inside a massive alien station that floated between trade routes and military zones. It was not meant for mercy or fairness. It was built for watching power being tested in its purest form. Species from many systems gathered there, not as equals, but as observers of strength. Every seat in the upper rings belonged to someone important, commanders, researchers, and war veterans who had seen countless battles across the stars. Below them, the arena floor stretched wide and empty, made from a dark metal that could withstand heavy impact. Energy shields surrounded it, glowing faintly like a thin veil between life and death. Everything inside that space was controlled. Nothing escaped unless the Watchers allowed it. On this day, something unusual was scheduled. A human was brought in. The announcement alone caused quiet reactions across the stands. Humans were not known for anything impressive in the wider galaxy. They were considered short-lived, physically limited, and emotionally unstable. Most records described them as survivors only through luck, numbers, and stubbornness. They were rarely tested in high-level arenas because there was no expectation challenge. But this time, the officials had decided otherwise. A female observer sat among a delegation from a scientific military order. She had seen many trials before. Beings with claws that could tear through steel, creatures that could sense fear through scent, and engineered predators designed for one purpose only: complete domination. She had learned to stay detached. That was the only way to watch such events without distraction. Still, something about this match felt different. The human was brought out without heavy chains, only light restraints that were removed once inside the arena. There was no special armor, no weapons, and no signs of preparation. Just a calm figure standing in the center of a vast killing ground. A few voices in the stands mocked the decision immediately. "Waste of a trial," one officer muttered. "It will end before it even begins," another replied. The human did not react. There was no shouting, no pleading, no attempt to study the exits. Instead, the figure simply looked around, taking in the space as if measuring it. That small detail caught the attention of the female observer more than anything else. Then the signal was given. Deep within the arena floor, heavy gates opened. The sound that followed was not just loud. It felt like pressure moving through the air. The apex predator entered. It was larger than any standard war beast, built through generations of controlled evolution. Its body was layered with muscle and armored plating, its movement shaking the ground with each step. Even from a distance, it gave off a sense of absolute dominance, the kind that made weaker species instinctively step back. The crowd leaned forward, waiting for the expected outcome. The predator locked onto the human almost instantly, its head lowered, its body tensed, and then it charged, fast, direct, certain. The impact that followed was expected to be the end of the match in a single moment. Most beings would not even have time to react. But the human moved. The moment the apex predator charged, the entire arena expected the human to be crushed instantly. The creature moved like a collapsing wall of muscle and armor, fast enough to break metal barriers in a single hit. The ground shook under its weight, and the air itself seemed to tighten as it rushed forward. But the human did not freeze. At the last possible moment, the figure shifted sideways with sharp, controlled movement. It was not a wild dodge or panic reaction. It was precise. The predator's massive strike missed by a fraction, slamming into the arena floor instead. The impact cracked the metal surface and sent a wave of vibration through the ground. A few in the upper stands leaned forward, surprised but still unconvinced. "Lucky movement," someone said. The female observer did not speak. Her eyes stayed fixed on the arena floor. The human had already turned. Most species would have run after avoiding the first attack. That was the normal response. Survival meant distance. But the human did not retreat far. Instead, the figure stayed close enough to watch the predator's body closely. That was the first strange thing. The apex predator turned its head slowly, recalibrating. Its instincts were not used to anything surviving the first strike. It adjusted quickly, muscles tightening again. A low sound rolled through its throat, deeper this time, more aggressive. Then it attacked again, this time faster. The predator swung its massive limb in a wide arc, aiming to crush everything in its path. The movement was so powerful that even the air seemed to bend away from it. The crowd expected a direct hit. The human ducked under it. Not just ducked, timed it perfectly, slipping through the smallest safe space beneath the strike. The movement was so close that even the observers above could feel tension in their own bodies. For the first time, a small shift happened in the crowd. The mockery softened into silence. The predator became more aggressive. It stopped using simple attacks and began a series of rapid movements, trying to trap the human in limited space. It circled, closing distance, forcing angles that should have made escape impossible. But something unexpected was happening. The human was not just reacting anymore. It was observing. Each movement of the predator was being watched carefully, the way it shifted weight before attacking, the slight pause before changing direction, the rhythm hidden inside its violence. The female observer noticed it first. The human was learning. In real time, that thought should not have made sense. Apex predators were designed to be unpredictable, to avoid patterns that could be studied quickly. Yet the human was already adapting, adjusting position with each new attack. A third strike came, lower, faster, aimed to cut off escape. The human stepped onto a broken piece of arena structure and used it to lift its body just enough to avoid contact. The move was not just survival. It was resourceful, using the environment without hesitation. The predator growled louder, frustrated now. It had expected fear. It had expected collapse. Instead, it was facing resistance. And that resistance was not random anymore. It was controlled. From the upper stands, the atmosphere changed. The early confidence faded into uncertainty. Some stopped speaking altogether. The female observer felt something unfamiliar rise in her thoughts. Not fear, not yet, but recognition that the situation was no longer predictable. Down in the arena, the human finally stopped moving backward completely. It stood its ground. The arena had changed in feeling. What started as a simple execution trial had turned into something no one in the upper stands could easily explain. The apex predator, once seen as an unstoppable force, was no longer moving with full confidence. It circled the human more carefully now, as if it was testing instead of simply attacking. And the human stood still. That stillness was not weakness. It was awareness. The female observer noticed how the human's breathing stayed steady, even after multiple near impacts. Most beings would have been shaken by now. Even trained soldiers showed stress after facing such pressure. But there was no visible panic, no wasted movement. The predator suddenly struck again, this time aiming lower, trying to sweep the human off balance. The attack was faster than before, driven by frustration. The creature wanted to end the situation quickly now, but the human reacted instantly. It stepped into the motion instead of away from it. That decision shocked more than a few observers. Instead of retreating from danger, the human moved closer to it, sliding past the arc of the attack with almost no wasted motion. The predator's limb passed just behind the human, missing by a narrow margin again. This was no longer luck. It was timing. The crowd grew quieter. Even those who had been laughing earlier were now watching without a sound. The atmosphere in the arena felt heavier, as if everyone was slowly realizing that something unusual was unfolding. The predator let out a deeper roar. It was no longer playing with its target. It was reacting with growing irritation. It turned quickly and launched a series of rapid strikes, one after another, trying to overwhelm the human with pure force and speed. The ground shook with each impact. Dust rose into the air, partially hiding the movements inside the arena. For a moment, it looked like the human would be swallowed by the attack. But through the dust, movement continued. The human was still there, not just surviving, but adjusting with each strike. Each movement became more efficient, more direct. It was as if the human was slowly removing unnecessary actions, refining every step under pressure. The female observer leaned forward slightly. She had seen trained combat units struggle against less complex threats than this. What she was watching now did not fit normal patterns of instinctive survival. This was learning under fire. Inside the dust cloud, a sudden shift happened. The predator lunged again, tried to corner the human against a broken section of arena wall. It was a strong tactical move, cutting escape routes and forcing a final clash. For a moment, it seemed successful. The human was back near debris, with limited space behind it. The predator moved in for what should have been the finishing strike. But instead of fear, the human showed something different. Focus. It turned its head slightly, scanning not just the predator, but the environment around it. Broken metal pieces, uneven ground, small raised edges. Everything was being observed in seconds. Then the human moved again. Not backward, sideways. A small shift, just enough to avoid the direct line of attack. The predator's strike hit the wall behind where the human had been standing, breaking more of the structure. The impact created a new opening in the debris, and the human used it immediately. It stepped through the gap created by the destruction, turning what should have been a trap into an escape path. Now the positions had changed again. The predator was no longer fully in control of the arena space, and for the first time, it hesitated for a fraction of a second. That hesitation was enough for everyone watching to notice, even the female observer, because in that moment, the impossible thought began forming in more than one mind across the stands. The human was not just surviving the apex predator. It was starting to challenge it. The hesitation of the apex predator did not last long, but it was enough to change the feeling inside the arena. For the first time since the match began, the creature did not rush forward immediately. It stood still, watching the human with growing aggression, as if trying to understand what was facing. The human did not waste that moment. It moved away from the broken wall and into more open space, where movement would not be restricted. Every step looked calm, but there was purpose behind it. The predator's earlier attacks had already changed the layout of the arena, creating scattered debris and uneven ground. The human seemed to be using all of it. The predator finally attacked again. This time it was different. It no longer relied on simple power. It began to move in shorter bursts, changing direction more often, trying to remove the human's ability to predict its path. It was adapting, but so was the human. Each time the predator changed rhythm, the human adjusted almost instantly. It was as if every attack was being read a fraction before it happened. The gap between attack and reaction became smaller, tighter, more precise. The crowd was no longer making noise. Even the earlier confident voices had disappeared. Now, every movement in the arena was being watched with full attention. The female observer noticed something important. The human was not reacting slower than before. It was reacting faster. Every exchange between them seemed to sharpen its timing, like pressure was forcing improvement instead of collapse. The predator tried a new approach. It stopped direct charging and began forcing the human toward tighter spaces, using wide, controlling movements. It wanted to limit escape options completely, slowly closing the arena like a trap. At first, it seemed effective. The human was pushed toward a section filled with scattered metal fragments and broken structural pieces. There was less open ground now. The predator increased pressure. It moved in carefully, reducing distance step by step, not giving space for escape. Its body lowered slightly, preparing for a final crushing strike. For a brief moment, it looked like the end was near, but the human did something unexpected. It stepped forward instead of back. That single movement changed everything. The predator reacted immediately, striking downward with full force. The attack hit the ground, but the human was no longer in that position. It had moved into the side angle created by the predator's own motion. And in that narrow opening, the human did something precise. It used a piece of sharp broken metal from the ground, not as a weapon in the traditional sense, but as a tool, a support point, a momentary extension of movement. With it, the human redirected its own motion, slipping deeper into the predator's blind side. The predator roared loudly now, more frustrated than ever. It turned too quickly, overcommitting to its movement. That small mistake caused its balance to shift for the first time. The human noticed immediately. It did not rush. It did not panic. It waited for the exact moment when the predator's weight was not fully stable. Then it moved in a short, controlled burst. Not a wild attack. Not a desperate strike. A precise action aimed at a vulnerable point exposed during the predator's imbalance. The impact was not loud, but it was meaningful. The predator stumbled slightly, its movement breaking for a fraction of a second. That moment was enough to change the flow of the fight again. The arena went completely silent, because now everyone could see it clearly. The apex predator was no longer dominating the fight, and the human was no longer just surviving. It was controlling moments inside the battle. The moment the apex predator stumbled, a strange silence spread across the entire arena. It was not the silence of boredom anymore. It was a silence of disbelief. Everyone was watching, but now no one was confident about what they were seeing. The creature steadied itself quickly, but something had changed. Its movements were no longer as smooth as before. There was a slight delay now, a small hesitation that did not exist at the start of the match. It circled the human again, but the confidence in its posture had shifted into caution mixed with frustration. The human remained calm. There was no celebration, no sign of excitement. It simply watched the predator, studying it as it moved. The broken ground around them, the scattered debris, and the damaged arena walls were no longer just damage. They had become part of the human's understanding of the space. The predator attacked again, faster and more aggressive than before. It tried to overwhelm the human with raw force, hoping speed and strength would end the match quickly. The ground shook under its charge, and the air felt heavy with pressure, but the human did not step back. Instead, it moved into the attack again. This time, the movement was sharper than before. It was no longer just survival. It was control. The human used the smallest gaps in timing, slipping past each strike with almost no wasted motion. Every step seemed planned in real time, adjusted with perfect awareness. The female observer tightened her grip slightly on the railing in front of her seat. She had seen many battles across many systems, but this level of adaptation inside a live encounter was rare. It was not just instinct. It was learning under extreme pressure at a pace that felt unnatural. The predator became more desperate. It tried to change strategy again, but its attacks were becoming less coordinated. The earlier dominance had turned into repeated attempts that kept failing by small margins. Each failure seemed to frustrate it further, and frustration made it predictable. The human noticed. It began to guide the flow of movement now, not by forcing attacks, but by positioning itself in ways that influenced where the predator would strike next. It was subtle, almost invisible at first, but the pattern was there. A trap was forming, but not the kind the predator intended. The predator made one final aggressive charge, committing fully to a direct impact meant to end everything in a single moment. It lowered its body and rushed forward with everything it had left. For a split second, the arena seemed to hold its breath. The human moved at the very last instant, not away, not randomly, but into the exact space where the predator's motion became unstable. The collision of timing and position broke the predator's rhythm completely. It lost balance for a brief moment, just enough for the human to act with precision again. The movement was short, clean, and final in intent. The apex predator collapsed forward heavily, its body hitting the ground with force that shook the arena floor. The sound echoed through the chamber, but it felt distant, almost unreal. For a few seconds, nothing moved. The predator did not rise. The human stood a short distance away, still breathing steadily, still alert, still watching for any sign of continued threat. Then slowly, the truth settled in. The apex predator, the creature that had never been defeated in recorded trials, was no longer in control of the arena. It had been stopped. From the upper stands, no one spoke. The silence was deeper now, heavier than before. It carried understanding, confusion, and something closer to fear of realization. The female observer finally understood what she had witnessed. It was not just survival. It was adaptation at a level that should not have been possible in such a short time. Down in the arena, the human did not react like a victor. It simply remained still, as if preparing for whatever came next, unaware or unconcerned with the shock spreading above. And in that moment, everything the galaxy thought it knew about humans quietly began to change.